Greetings and salutations, fine people. I'm Patty Alvarez. Welcome to The Good Soul, a show where we'll have supercharged chats with everyday humans from all walks of life and unpack what in their story will inspire us all. We'll extract the untapped wisdom, distill it, and serve it up to you in all the right ways that will engage, enlighten, and most of all, inspire growth within your soul. I think people are awesome. So join me on this journey through the hearts and minds of ordinary people to uncover the good soul within you. This is The Good Soul. Welcome back to The Good Soul, everybody. Episode 74. I'm Patty Alvarez, and today we're diving into a topic that touches every single one of us: shame. Shame is that quiet voice that says we're not enough, that we failed, or that we don't deserve joy. It shows up in the way we eat, drink, work, love, and even in the way we rest. But here's the good news. Shame does not have to define us. My guest today is my dear friend and licensed therapist, Chris McClure, and together we're exploring what I like to call the art of shame-free living. So let's get started. Chris, did I title you correctly? Licensed therapist?
Well, technically it's correct. Yeah, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed clinical addiction specialist. I don't even know.
Okay. Well, world, for the third time on The Good Soul, meet Mr. Chris McClure. One of my favorites. Yes, my brother from another mother. So today we're talking shame, and I want to get right into it because we have a lot of ground to cover today. Shame versus guilt. How do you explain the difference?
So first of all, it's good to be here. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Just jump right into the questions.
Boom.
Yeah, I think getting grounded for me is really important. I've been marinating in shame today. We're just prepping for this thing.
Okay.
I think I told you out in the hallway, I'm not a real academic and I'm not real good about characterizing things. I think I'm prepared to give a few things relative to generalizing how we deal with this in treatment. But, we may go into some of my stuff as well, because I think that's where it's most accessible. Yeah. And I think that's where people might be able to pick up the heart to heart as opposed to the head to head. It's a very, very different wavelength.
So well put.
So, shame versus guilt. You had it in your prompter, and I think this is a pretty common sentiment, but effectively guilt is a pretty healthy reaction. We do something, out of boneheadedness or selfishness or, whatever we might want to apologize for.
I need money.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we might feel guilty, right? And that kind of calls us back to correction, making amends, saying you're sorry, paying the money back that you stole or whatever. Mm-hmm. But shame is about who I am. Shame is about who I am. It attacks our identity. And I think one of your later questions is, why is it so deeply rooted or something? And it's because of that, because it's about who I am, not what I did.
Okay. Tell me where you think this who I am comes from within us. Why are you laughing? It's a big question.
Well, and we talked about this in the hallway too. Yeah. Like, where does our identity come from? Does it come from our parents? Does it come from what we do, right? Or does it come from somewhere else? Okay. And I think that's the risk of, getting out here in the secular world and talking a lot about stuff that as deep as shame, because for me in my story, my identity comes from God. Mm-hmm. And it's a God of a particular denomination and belief system and
I don't
all
mind
that.
If you say it.
I don't have a problem saying it either. But I think for a long time I was a churchgoer and I was a box checker, and I didn't feel it and it didn't work, and I judged a lot of the people that tried to shove it further down my throat. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's a little bit of discomfort there, but ultimately, like, you can walk this thing all the way back, and you can keep asking, well, who told you that? Well, who told you that? Who told them that? Right. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, the buck stops at where my identity comes from, which is a child of God with dignity, no matter what I do. Right.
Goosebumps. Can I just sidebar really quick? And I'm sure this isn't a quick. What made you go from a box checker to a true believer?
Well, you know that story. It's my bottoming out
Oh,
with
okay.
addiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And actually some of the changes for me started a few years before that. My mom had a really deep faith that she owned, but she didn't talk about. It was just a very, very quiet thing. And my wife and I were considering leaving the church in my late 20s, and I was still drinking.
Mhm.
But I did a lot of apologetics and a lot of research, and there was something that was kind of keeping me at the particular church. So that's really where it started, was like, what's my identity relative to what I believe, right?
Mhm.
And I started to own that around 25 to 28 years old, and I kept drinking.
Okay.
and that reaches a whole new story around age 32 for me, when I finally quit and reached out for help.
Okay.
Relative to shame, I was doing some supervision today with another therapist. And he said, Chris, talk about the idea that not being okay is actually okay. He said, talk about the idea that when you reached out for help, you began to get the help. You began to be able to address the shame when you said, I'm not okay. Mm-hmm. So it isn't a pull myself up by my bootstraps model to deal with shame. Mm-hmm. We need relationship. Ideally, we need some kind of belief in something that's bigger than humanity. Mm. At least that's what I believe. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm a secular therapist. But
what does that mean?
It means that I'm not a labeled Christian counselor.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, when we do really deep trauma work, there's good stuff that can be done, and we're never completely fixed. And the clients that want to continue and go deeper, I usually would propose, what do you think about getting God in the middle of this healing process? And then we can go a little
Chris,
further.
That's just so nice. I have to make a distinction between guilt and shame in my eyes, for the layperson. I have a saying that I use when our actions are not aligned with our beliefs. Right. Mm-hmm. Something is amiss.
Sure.
I feel guilty. We talked pre-show about the inner child and this deep-seated, which obviously we are running out of time now. We have about just over a minute left, but it's much heavier and more like you said, to get God involved in this spirituality. Mm-hmm. It's much more than checking a box to rid yourself of shame, or like you said, with guilt, pay the money back, or give your husband a big hug if you were acting like a brat, or you could quickly fix these things, whereas shame, who I am, so
much deeper.
I love the who I am. I love the who I am.
Well, you were talking about the roots of shame, and I do see the time. Can I jump in on something?
Yeah, real quick.
Okay. So the idea from a neuroscience perspective, and most belief systems in therapy, shame starts with these major traumas or subtle and chronic inability to get your needs met, or being barked at in a certain way by mom and dad or your caregivers in a chronic fashion.
And regularly. Yeah.
Yep. And what happens is the neuroscience will show this to be true, that fragmented and frozen young parts of us become just kind of stuck out there. Mm. And when they get triggered, a classic therapy word that I hate,
but it's powerful.
We begin to feel those things, and we get hijacked from the present moment. And those feelings come up and drive us towards other behaviors.
Right. And that's when we were talking about pre-show. If you know somebody who's been traumatized, when they were 8 years old, they act like an 8-year-old when they get upset.
Right.
Okay, that's our cue.
Okay.
We're going to wrap up the first segment. Guys, next coming up, we're going to talk about shame and everyday habits, work, food, alcohol, you name it. We'll cover it. Talk to you in a few here in The Good Soul. This segment of The Good Soul is brought to you by Aaron Fisnick, certified luxury home specialist with Ivester Jackson Christie's International Real Estate. Aaron serves all levels of the greater Lake Norman region real estate market, and whether buying or selling, she is very much the lady who will deliver like no other. Many of us at Good Soul are also really happy clients. Aaron can be reached at 704-728-5657 or reach out to me and I'll get you guys connected. Thank you, Aaron Fisnick, and thank you guys for tuning in and supporting The Good Soul. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Good Soul. We are on episode 74. I can't believe it.
Woo!
The Art of Shame-Free Living with the amazing Chris McClure. We're going to jump right back into it. I want to ask you, do you see perfectionism and shame as traveling hand in hand?
Yes. And Patty had me prompted for that one, but it's very, very confident. So perfectionism is just one of the very many ways that you can deal with the desperation of having a fragmented or an empty identity, or just the idea that I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do to overcompensate that? Because you're still living, breathing, operating in your job and in your family and in your marriage, right? Mm-hmm. So if I don't believe that I'm worthy of my wife's love, or that I'm worthy of the salary that I'm earning, mm-hmm. I'm going to overcompensate.
Chris, you had asked me that. How do you combat? I think you had said your shame. I can't remember how you asked me, but I said by being the best yoga studio owner, wife, the skinniest, right. As pretty as I can be, like. Right. All the ists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's such a big deal, and it can come out in so many different ways, which is why in the first segment I had mentioned the discomfort with trying to generalize this and create this big academic list of, all these different manifestations of shame. It's so much easier for me to talk about my own story. Talk about Manny. Manny's sitting over here off camera, right? And we were talking just before we started recording, and he said, he's like, the only time I've got some of this gut issue is when my wife and I are at odds. And there's a reason for that. We have brain cells in our heart muscles, and we have brain cells in our guts. And when I say we, I really mean especially men. But Americans, especially men, get very, very disconnected from our emotions. And so when we start working with shame work or anxiety or other symptoms, I start trying to plug people into their bodies and ask them, what is it telling you? Often, all right, I'm gonna go off on a little bit of a tangent relative to our bodies and shame. I had a shame cycle that was going on since I was 12, but in recovery, we begin to see things differently. So this is 13 years ago. And then, given the opportunity to go into, an education around being a therapist, a little bit more clarity, a little bit more awareness, and the right people and, circumstances and therapy were put in my path. And I began to look at this shame cycle somatically in my body. And it was a stack. It was a stack of, anxiety, relief, and shame. And I began to do what I was told to do from a therapeutic perspective, which is just sit with it, which is extremely uncomfortable. We want to get up and move and distract or numb. Mm-hmm. Picture it being held out in my hand. And again, very, very uncomfortable. Continue to breathe. Remind yourself that you're safe. And this thing manifested in my imagination, of course, but my body was trying to talk to me as this black tar. And it was, as I continued to try to hold it, it became more and more disgusting in my imagination, right? And dripping off of my hands. Mm-hmm. And I began to just retch, like in a very genuine, like I just started throwing up. And I didn't actually throw up, but my body, after holding this shame cycle and tucking it away, and yet getting triggered and then re-triggering it based on numbing behavior, over and over and over, was holding all of this gunk. And it's a metaphor, but I began to retch.
Do you feel as though that yours may be a metaphor, but in reality, like Manny really is holding like fluids and like inflammation and like that sort of thing?
It's quite possible. I think what I'm more confident in is that his physical manifestations are more than likely linked to the emotional connectedness with you.
And it's nothing bad. It's
nothing bad.
Absolutely. And when that gets disrupted, Yeah.
But I think I'm obviously a symptom, and I'm not taking away. I'm not trying to say it's not my fault at all.
No, it's not your fault.
But
It's me.
I'm just a manifestation of something that was here long before I arrived in his life.
Well, remember what I said in the first session? Our memories and our insecurities can hijack us in the present moment.
Mm.
And so when we do this parts work, which is a very specific type of therapy, we go back and do some inner child work and ideally reform and re-raise that child, which can be done pretty quickly. When you raise a physical child, it takes 18 to 25 years, right?
Yeah.
But we can do this pretty darn quickly by just attuning to the child. And I'm talking about picturing myself at 4 years old, for example, inviting him back into my lap, telling him I see him, asking him what he wants to say. And then there's a few other things from a body imagery perspective we can do to extract some of those burdens that 4-year-old has carried for 40 years.
Segueing this into the tangibles.
Yeah.
Alcohol, food, drugs, sex.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a impact, or in what way does our history impact our relationships with all of the following?
This is a complicated question. Any of those things can be used to escape or numb, right? Or to feel better about who I am. The action of alcohol on a brain produces more dopamine today. It borrows dopamine from tomorrow. And so it actually, chemically, it produces a cycle of feeling better and then tomorrow feeling worse than baseline, right? So if that is repeated, then now you're producing a shame cycle over a long period of time that you're getting into a very repetitive and chronic chemical cycle, right? So, you asked a very complex question. Give me another example.
Well, let's take me, for example, and what we talked about in show prep, how I feel so much better when I'm not drinking alcohol. So I spent a long time not drinking just because I was too busy and this and that. And then we built the house and it's like the good times are rolling and flowing. And so I'll have drinks. I would have drinks. And I was drinking maybe a little bit more than I was comfortable with. And whether it was a hangover or suffering from a lot of guilt. Okay. Do you think it was from borrowing tomorrow's dopamine? Or do you think it was because my actions weren't aligned with that perfect person I wanted to be? A la, I shouldn't be drinking at all.
And maybe both.
Yeah.
Maybe both, right?
Yeah.
But when it's the latter, it's going to impact you and it has the ability to kind of grab hold and a little more difficult to get the fish hooks out of you, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because it's about your identity. And typically if that's an accurate synopsis, that it's more about you're not the person you want to be, there's probably some childhood wounds attached to that as well.
Well, my father was he was an alcoholic. He was very functioning and not abusive, but he was definitely an alcoholic. He was wonderful. And I always say that I almost liked my dad more when he was drinking because he was more available to us. He wasn't busy at work. He was a lot sweeter. He was a lot more generous with his American Express card.
Right.
Yeah. That was in Al-Anon, that was always my thing. Is it weird that I almost like my dad more when he drinks?
It's not weird at all.
And he was great when he didn't drink too. He was just, he was just a little more outgoing. He was home,
But why did you title him an alcoholic? If alcohol affected him in only positive ways, where did you or the family begin to perceive that this is an illness that's actually a problem?
Because he was showing physical symptoms. He would, he couldn't go to work, and he he functioned. Him and my mother would go out to eat. They'd go down to Atlantic City. But he wasn't himself. He was just his drunk self, and he was, he'd sit there sweet, almost like a puppy dog. And there was, towards the end, when we got older, this wasn't at all our whole lives. Just more, I would say, when I was in my 20s, 30s, even into my 40s. I would say more in my 30s and 40s. He would drink too much, and we would worry that he was going to die. He would fall or whatever. And then when he'd stop, we'd have to go through this whole process too of, making sure he had Gatorade handy and, everything to kind of bring him down. Okay. So you could see the physical symptoms.
Now, as you think about that, what's going on in your body?
caretaker, control.
What's going on in your body physically?
I'm nervous. My sisters are going to be mad I'm saying this out loud.
Okay. All right. So why are you nervous though?
Disneyland, be careful.
No, she's not. I
But
mean,
why are you nervous? What might they think? And therefore, what did other people think about the family? back then?
perfectionism
Okay.
and lack thereof. So by admitting something like that, which I'm really not ashamed of, my father was a wonderful man. Lack of we didn't have the perfect life that we would want people to perceive us to have had, or I can't speak for my sisters, but for myself. So I think the perfectionism would be a big part of it. And also speaking on somebody else's behalf. So I always am careful with my family members, friends, loved ones on the podcast to not give away their story. Yeah. It's not my job to do that. And what if they don't want me to share that? Maybe they don't. I know my one sister won't care. My other sister might be like, hey, take it easy with the...
Yeah.
But I'll say it again, and I'm not saying this just because I wouldn't be talking about it as openly if I was so traumatized by my father's drinking, if he was abusive, if he was a wonderful man. Yeah. And anybody who knows him, I mean, I'm not BSing anybody who knows him. Yeah. So,
so if you gave me more time, what I would do is I would continue to talk about your body and ideally link that back to today or last year, whenever this cycle was most intense. And we would try to find some correlations in the feelings, because often the front of our brains, the cognitive part of our brains doesn't make these connections.
Yeah. And physically, Chris, to be honest with you, not to keep making it about me, but I start getting a little bit of a headache. Mm-hmm. And I can feel almost like myself fill up with this energy that I have to contain, and why I do yoga and meditate. And I'm constantly swiping lavender oil under my nose is to calm me down. So on that note, we have to hit pause, guys. We will see you for segment 3 here on The Good Soul. Don't go away.
Want a little bit more rainbows and unicorns in your life? Start your day with Good Soul Daily. Every morning, you'll find me in your inbox where I share a quick story, lesson, or quote to spark joy and inspiration. Come join our hundreds of daily readers and let's step into our new day together with my lighthearted, Pollyannic approach. I would be honored if you'd allow me into your heart and head, where you are sure to be delighted and inspired. Text me over your email address to 704-618-7993 for your daily dose of happiness and reassurance that life is pretty darn awesome.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Good Soul. We are on episode 74. We are talking the art of shame-free living. Lots of buildup, and this episode could probably be 8 episodes.
Yes.
But
yes,
let's talk about intimacy and relationships. Starting with intimacy, why do you feel as though sexuality is such a shame-heavy topic in our culture, and in, I think, most cultures?
What's interesting, you said intimacy, and then you said as if it meant sex.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I know.
Right?
Sorry. I'm going to get my mind out of the gutter.
Well, so that's, I call that out because it illustrates that our culture has kind of surgically removed emotional intimacy, and we perform, and then we meet our spouse at home, and then we get sex. Obviously, truncated that significantly.
Yeah.
Perform as in go make the money, whatever. Then we come home and we have sex. But intimacy. So your question was about sexuality. Can I go in a different direction again?
Please do. Yeah.
And then I do want to come back because I think it's a really valid question you're going down, but you got me thinking about emotional intimacy, which is after I do the inner child work, if that's going to be your framework of healing, right? After I get better about who I am, and that what I do doesn't determine my identity, and what I fail at doesn't confirm that I'm nothing. After I get better at those things, the biggest antidote to continuing this healing process is to connect with my partner emotionally, be the truest, most vulnerable version of myself, and go to her when I need her, go to her when I want to celebrate, and just begin to share in a very, very different way that I learned as a child. You can't. You're not allowed to feel as a little boy.
Interesting.
So that kind of got shamed out of me very quickly.
Yeah.
And it does most of our culture. So I want to go back to your question about what is the question about sex?
Well, I guess that's a big one because I think that especially as female, I guess being not open, I mean, open with my husband, obviously. We're talking about standard husband and wife, that sort of thing, not like radical behaviors that some people partake in.
Sure.
I'm just talking about this is between my husband and I. I don't know, though. I don't really feel guilty. I don't feel guilty with him. I feel very comfortable with him, to be honest with you. I don't know that there's a lot of shame involved with he and I. Sometimes when we're done, I was like, I didn't mean what I said in the heat of the moment. I'll get like say something naughty and I'll be like, I didn't mean that in real life. I only meant that in bed life. I don't know how much that applies to what we're talking about.
It applies a lot. It's easier to look someone in the eye when you're having an affair or when you're having a one night stand than it is your intimate partner.
Yeah. Why is that?
Intimacy. They know you. There's so much more at risk. We are this committed entity. She knows me. She can hurt me like that. And so the vulnerability to be able to look her in the eyes is a very significant move. There's a book called Passionate Marriage.
Okay.
Get it.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Let's do it, baby.
It's by David Snarch, Passionate Marriage.
David Snarch, Passionate Marriage.
His
We'll do
eyes
that.
wide open sex is pretty much the theme of the book.
Oh, okay. So you're really like fully connected and present.
Yeah, and it's not a Kama Sutra. It's about your emotional development as a human being and what it takes to be vulnerable and emotionally connected, which is all the opposite of today's topic.
Yeah. Well, another thing I think about too is I had a family member who was like, I guess born again is the word for a while. I don't think I hear people using that term,
Right.
but that they believed in only having sex for reproductive purposes and that one of the partners in the marriage, I don't want to get into because I don't want to, didn't want to partake because he saw it as like barbaric and animalistic. And that was, I think, shame. Right. To have sex is like barbaric, shouldn't be used as a form of pleasure and just to make babies. Yeah.
That's tragic. I believe that is so tragic.
Yeah.
We're designed with natural desires.
Yeah.
And again, back to our roots and where are we grounding this conversation? This is not technically this is a secular podcast, right?
Yeah.
But, I believe God has made us in a certain way that's going to, at least if we're connected to him, mimic what he gave us in Eden. Like there are things here on earth that are enjoyable. A wonderful sunrise, a good glass of wine. Not for me, but I've learned that through a lot of pain. Sex and intimacy, it is the closest representation of God's love for us. And by the way, the Trinity is 3 in 1, right? It's relationship. And by the way, neuroscience will show that there is nothing that is standalone. Everything is about relationship. So all these things firing around, even atoms, there's a photon. I'm gonna stop because I'm not a neuroscientist.
Yeah.
But they're beginning to be able to prove and to talk about metaphor in relationship relative to the basis of science.
Wow. And biology.
Biology, yeah, right.
Interesting.
So this is what you get when you just let me talk, right?
No, I love it. I think that's great. Everything is like tweetable. So why is it then that a stranger can't get to us like our partner can? What do you think that is?
Yeah.
As it relates to shame?
Well, I think the answer is going to sound very similar to what I said relative to sex. The stranger can't hurt me. The stranger can't challenge my identity. Now, if I have a people-pleasing and perfectionistic complex, that is going to bother me, right? But not nearly as much as my spouse or my child.
Right.
So it's such a good question. I don't know if I have a great answer, except when they know me so well, there's so much more at risk.
Yeah. It's just kind of how we're wired,
Yeah.
I guess, as humans. Why are my eyes blue and his eyes hazel? Yeah. And another, and kind of a spin-off of that would be why, when we are not getting along, when we're twisted, meaning Manny and I, all of those feelings come out, just like I'm hungover.
Oh.
You're a bad girl. You're terrible with money. You're overweight. Look at those wrinkles. Like everything that's wrong with me in my eyes comes out when we're fighting. And I'm in the car like, you are the worst. You are horrible.
So you're becoming aware that you're getting hijacked because those things are not about the moment between you and Manny.
No.
We had a moment the other day about cheesecake. She thought I ate the rest of her cheesecake. I didn't, or at least I don't think I did. And she swear and when she put up her hand and was like, "You are too argumentative. I am not spending the evening with you." I had this giant gaping hole in my chest I had to live with it for the rest of the night that was very similar to when I was probably between 4 and 8 years old. And my very identity with my father was challenged because I was useless and I was in the way. Shame, right? So you're getting hijacked. Has nothing to do with Manny.
Do you feel, do you, of course not. I mean, definitely. Do you feel as though that Darlene could be the anecdote to that? Like, in other words, if we weren't, like, he would be the drug. If he were to just put his arms around me and tell me how much he loves me and he's sorry that we had this argument and let's just go to the tavern and have a nice dinner together. Everything's fine. That would be like a Band-Aid.
Depends on how it happens. It would be a nice, comfortable Band-Aid.
Because I would feel like
it's still a release.
Yeah.
Well, not a release, but take the pressure. And I would feel like Superwoman again. I'd feel like,
Absolutely.
the belle of the ball again.
But if I was working with you in a couples fashion, I would find out why he can't do that, because you're aggravating the cycle in him as well, right?
Well,
you're aggravating his shame cycle in some way, shape, or form. If he can't show up with that Band-Aid, so to speak, then there's something getting aggravated in his shame cycle.
I have to say, it's so funny that you say that, because whenever he says, like, all I want to do is make you happy, all I want to do is make you happy. And I'm like, all you have to do is hug me and not ignore me when you're mad at me. And it's that simple. I don't need a Birkin bag. I don't need, I just need you to put your arms around me. But
my emotions don't switch off like
he doesn't switch quick.
I don't switch quick.
I switch quick.
She just, I mean, I would love to, but then it's fake,
Yeah.
And I want everything to be real with her because, that's the love,
Mm-hmm.
Guys, nature's calling. We got to wrap up the third segment, and we'll see you for the fourth segment, where we get into how do we troubleshoot this stuff. So he's going to give us all the answers. Don't go away. Who isn't looking to get happy and healthy and empower themselves in an extraordinary fitness community? At Good Soul Hot Yoga, we offer life-changing yoga, strength training, cycling, and relaxing therapeutic classes that will make everything in your life feel better. For some power, balance, and peace of mind, we will deliver. Come experience our spa-like wonderland in the center of Mooresville. We will become your happy place. Welcome back to The Good Soul, episode 74, The Art of Shame-Free Living. And we just spent, that was a long break, like 20 minutes. We got pretty heavy. Chris and I are like, woo! But no, we got into some good stuff. I feel like we uncovered between Manny and I. But let's talk about troubleshooting. And I think a good way to get into this is to talk about empathy and how that could impact. So basically, why does empathy matter so much with regards to shame?
Well, you do in your paragraph, you talk about the neuroscience. There, you mentioned cortisol. No, you didn't. Oxytocin. Mm-hmm. Read it real quick about oxytocin.
Sure. I said brain science, empathy reduces stress hormones. Cortisol increases oxytocin, literally calming the body.
Yeah. So what that is it's science supporting what I said earlier, that this is all about relationship. So when you got a good therapist who starts to really understand your story and validates your feelings and looks you in the eye, it's called attunement. And there's a huge, huge attunement gap in especially our culture relative to raising children, and especially for boys. I said that earlier. When a 5-year-old little boy is crying and he's got an open wound or whatever, his dad's immediately doing his own shame cycle, and I'm really truncating this and generalizing, but he's saying, "Oh my gosh, my kid is going to grow up to be a wimp. I need to stop that," right? And what happens to the child is he doesn't get that attunement. He doesn't get that security that I'm going to be okay. The 5-year-old needs their parents, right? And they need to know that their parents are going to be there. And if I'm cast aside or yelled at for my feelings, that's opposite of what the neuroscience is. Your question's about empathy. I'm just trying
You're not getting empathy.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
No,
right.
that makes perfect sense. It very much ties into one another.
Yeah. So hopefully I answered your question. I could keep talking. But...
Well, another thing too, from a therapist perspective, and I'm just thinking about like Manny is one type of individual.
Mm-hmm.
You're another type of individual. Manny's brother is another, my father. So it's also bio-individual.
It's very, very individual and contextual. Absolutely.
Yeah. And being able to understand as a parent, not only as a parent, as a human being who's in relationships, the parent is probably the most important role we're going to play, but how do we navigate those types? So especially if you have 3 kids, 3 boys, one is, very sensitive, one is very tough, and one is very in the middle. And how do you know that as a parent or as a lover or as a friend, how to navigate that stuff? I guess there's an art to that and not a science.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely an art. And I think
empathy.
Right. Empathy. Exactly. The smartest thing that I was ever told by a mentor of mine, he said, "Your son is communicating with you." And I was having all kinds of trouble with my son when he was around 11 and 12 years old, and the behavior was pretty extreme. Mm-hmm. And yet the way I was treating it, my shame cycle was coming out because of the way my dad raised me. And then this kid was in my head and in my shame cycle, very, very disrespectful. So what you've got now is you have an explanation from a person that's done a little bit of work on the context and the individual stuff. Mm-hmm. But that person said, "Your son is communicating with you." Is it like there's not, this isn't, you need to learn to listen differently. Right. And, we got him a little bit of help. We actually got his brain scanned, and we learned that there was some neurobiological things going on in his brain that caused very unique sensitivities for him. And we got him some supplements that he started to take, and it very quickly changed his behavior. You're not going to be able to find a silver bullet for every problem, but we had been tripping over this behavior and this corrective action from his mom and I for 3 or 4 years, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't find it quickly. We kept asking questions. We kept trying to listen to him differently. So how? Grab a therapist, do your reading, pay attention, try different things, but try different things consistently too.
Okay. Can I just ask you one question?
Yeah.
One of my favorite lessons that I learned and don't feel bad if you want to take a drink of your water. One of my favorite lessons I learned in Al-Anon was that we may not be an alcoholic, but we take on the characteristics.
It's a family disease, yeah.
Right. And it's not only the case, I feel as though in families with alcoholics, I think
shame.
All of our parents. Yeah. So any version of shame is usually passed down from generation to generation.
Absolutely.
And I think it's one of the coolest, most powerful and like profound discoveries that I've made. And I've always kind of carried that through with me in my life. And God knows how much learning I have to do. But and learning to identify, like I said to you, I don't know if I said that on camera or in private, like how I grapple with guilt and fear when I wake up in the morning.
Yes, off camera.
Off camera. Sorry, everybody. But, I'll wake up sad or scared, and I have to remind myself, like, oh, there's plenty of money in the bank, and oh, Manny's lying next to you and he's okay, he's here, and Molly's in Portland, and Jesse and Ray, I go through like roll call in my head. Everything is great. I check my boxes. And it's funny because, not to again make this about me, but part of the app that I'm developing to kind of in conjunction with the blog is to combat that. Is that the first thing I wake up, I'm going to push notification from the Good Soul, and I'm going to read this 3-paragraph like bucket of cheer. Yeah. And then I'm going to go through my gratitude, and I'm going to go through, I'm going to check all of my boxes. Man, will you take a look at that real quick? I'm going to check. No, that's okay. I'm going to check all of my boxes and make sure that, like my shame boxes in a way. And like, that might be a great, like tool in the app. Like, what is it that you are lying to yourself? And even if you do even if you are an alcoholic, or you do have a sugar addiction, or you are littering, or you're doing bad things, it doesn't necessarily make you a terrible person. Well, littering, I don't know. No. But like, how are you going to learn, like you had talked about the inner child, like to get that child, put it on your lap.
Right.
How are we going to work with this?
Right.
So we don't live in like in pain.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of your questions, and you're segueing into this as well, is tools to kind of combat shame and the art of shame-free living, right?
Sure.
Any good self-help book or support organization is going to advocate for a daily routine. They're going to advocate for things like journaling, mindfulness, but language. You in your paragraph there, your prompts, you talk about redoing your language, and you're giving examples. Your roll call in the morning, everybody's fine, there's plenty of money in the bank. That's going to speak, if you do that at a deep level and you kind of have an open heart about it, and maybe even need to repeat it, it'll calm your nervous system.
Yeah.
Energy begets energy. And so I think what we focus on grows. So I'm in the middle of a group of guys in recovery, and they just obsess about gratitude lists, and it works really well for them to get their focus on what it is that they have, get their focus on their needs that are met, not the wants that are unmet. Right?
Yeah, I love that.
So,
does that work for you?
No.
I could tell by the way you said it. Yeah, no, that's interesting.
No.
Well, it reminds me of Elizabeth Gilbert when she talks about like, what's your passion? And she's like, I don't have a passion. What's wrong with me? So you don't really relish in gratitude. Like, how do you?
A single gratitude list is extremely effective for me. But,
it is. Okay.
Yeah, but these guys are doing it on the daily, and they send these lists to each other, and it works really well for them. But for me, it becomes a stage to dance on, and how do I word things appropriately?
Yeah.
And suddenly the mechanical, clunky overlays of shame are right there, right? And I'm just trying to not be shame-based again.
Do you feel like it's performative amongst them?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
Okay.
I think from a judgment perspective, based on my experience, I guess I feel like it is. But I know how powerful the perspective is, and I know how powerful writing a really heartfelt A through Z. What are you grateful for? That starts with A and then B and then C.
Oh, okay.
When I do that once a month or once a year, it really does shift me out of negativity.
I never heard that. A through Z.
A through Z.
What's your Z? Zebra print rug?
Today, I don't know what it would be. Maybe it's the zebra print
the
share.
Zipper.
Exactly, the zipper. Right.
Can it be in the word, the letter Z? Because there's not a lot of Z or Q option. No, I'm only kidding. I'm sorry. Excuse my silliness. Can you tell me again the two books that you recommended? The one was...
Passionate Marriage by David Schnarch.
Okay.
Schnarch. SCH.
I'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, thank you. And then I don't remember
something about sex.
Oh yeah, that was off camera.
There
is an amazing book called. Was it?
I don't know.
It's called The Sex Talk You Never Got, and it's by Sam Jolman.
Okay. And we had talked about a little bit about Brene Brown going into this. Are there any specific books by Brene Brown?
I think everything that she does is wonderful.
Shame-based.
She has so much research and focus around shame, and she does such a good job of characterizing it and making it academic. Like I said, I'm not good at, but she also accesses it in her own stories, and it's so relatable. So,
Yeah, she's fantastic. She's
good.
fantastic. Chris, it's time. It's time.
Hey.
Thank you. I'm like, I was ready to ask you another question, but I can't. But thank you so much. And I hope we can make you a regular guest on the show because you're so helpful and heartfelt. Fantastic. And I'm
Very
sure
kind.
everybody agrees. So
I'm glad to be here.
guys, like, share, comment, and as always, keep coming back. And we will keep trying to make this world and ourselves better people and a better place. So keep tuning in. Love you all. Thanks for being here. And again, thank you, Chris. And of course, thank you, Manny, my love.
Good soul.
Bye, guys. Love you. Mean it.